Hello, welcome to HealthWatch. I'm Sophie Scott. The latest snapshot of Indigenous health paints a dire picture of what it's like to be a young Aboriginal boy growing up in Australia. It found they're more likely to smoke, drink and suffer chronic health problems throughout their life, and more likely to die when they reach their late 60s, a decade before non-Indigenous men. The problems are well documented, but this is the first look at how well Aboriginal men and boys are faring, and the news isn't good.
What we've found is that at all ages, the rate of disease and death from disease is higher for Indigenous men and boys, not only compared to the non-Indigenous communities, but also compared to Indigenous women and girls.
A report from the Australian Medical Association found more Indigenous boys die as babies than girls. A boy born in 2005 is likely to live only until their late 60s, 6 years less than an Indigenous girl. Heart attack and stroke remains the leading cause of death, and most of it is preventable.
What this data particularly tells us is that health disparities across the whole of life for Indigenous males are there are excessive burdens of ill health, and that these have profound impacts from childhood across life for Indigenous men.
Half of all Indigenous men smoke. That's 2 to 3 times higher than the rest of the population.
Smoking is a very big killer in Aboriginal communities. 1 in 5 Aboriginal people die because they smoke.
The recent focus on Indigenous health and a boost in funding has had some positive effect, with a slight drop in overall death rates. But today's report shows much more needs to be done.
The reason why we haven't been successful in the past is because Aboriginal men have not been encouraged to take ownership of the design, the development and the implementation of those programs and initiatives that can assist in overcoming some of those terrible statistics.
The Australian Medical Association says better education and easier access to doctors will help to close the gap. There's growing concerns among doctors over the federal government plans to establish super clinics. Around 100 GPs cancelled surgery this week for a protest meeting. They're worried that the one-stop medical shops will compromise care and spell the end for the family doctor.
Hi, how are you, Dad?
At the time of life when you might need them most, getting to a doctor can be the hardest it's ever been. At 81, Desiree Rothe knows just how difficult it is.
I'd have to be helped into a taxi, and then depending where the clinic is, I'd have to be helped into there and then sit and wait. There's all sorts of things to consider.
House calls from her GP have allowed her to stay in her home of 50 years. These GPs are also worried that the federal government super clinics will spell the end of personal care given by the family doctor and turn young interns off general practice.
They've got to say, I really want to be a family doctor, I really want to be in general practice, and where do I go? And I think there's a great fear that they'll just have these super clinics to go to.
I mean, I've been in practice 33 years in general practice. It's tried and proven primary health care should be delivered by the GP.
The federal government's super clinics were an election promise, with one-stop healthcare shops providing doctors and other health services under one roof. So far, 36 have been given the go-ahead, and the federal government thinks they're the shot in the arm the health system needs.
And we now have GP organisations knocking on the door, asking us to expand the program so that their existing practices can take up this opportunity.
The Minister insists the super clinics will appeal to the new generation of doctors, but students fear big clinics will compromise patient care.
It would detract from the perception of general practice as a valuable speciality, and it may ultimately lead to less people and less medical students wanting to take up this profession.
Doctors warn today's closed clinics could be a sign of things to come.
And that's all for now. See you next week.